Hi, I'm Stephen Reich here at the pokepress studios in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm on the phone with Anne from Pikapi Podcast. And before we get on to the advanced generation movies, we decided that in our series of comparisons of the Japanese and English ending songs of the Pokemon movies, since the Magearna movie just came out, Volcanion the Mechanical Marvel, we would do a comparison on that one. So this one structurally is going to be more or less the same as our regular episodes, but of course we haven't seen the movie as many times, and we haven't listened to the songs maybe as many times because these are relatively new. But before we get into the actual movie discussion, I want to take just a minute or two out here to sort of explain why, at least from my perspective, I started this series and why I wanted to do this series. One point of this is obviously musical appreciation discussion. I felt that Pokemon music wasn't getting as good a discussion as it could, so that's one of the reasons. But one of the reasons I started it last year is that not just because of the tenor of the political situation, but also some creative products that came out last year, I don't feel like they got a fair shake from the internet. And well aware I can't solve all of the internet polarization problems all by myself. So I figured I would stick to the area I know best, which is Pokemon music, and see if I can't work out a way that we can sort of compare and contrast without totally hating on something to prop up the other or anything like that, to have a nice, hopefully very thoughtful discussion. And I hope these have done that. If you have any comments, if this is on Anne's Patreon, go ahead and leave a comment there. Otherwise, if this is on my YouTube channel, leave a comment there. But that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to start this discussion, to show that it is possible in today's day and age to have a civilized comparison between two items. Anne, sounds like you kind of agree with that.
Yeah, and like from my end, I enjoy like just talking about Pokemon and sharing the thing I love. Like I do this podcast because it brings me joy. But it's been fun like being able to have my mind changed because you have very different musical tastes and life experience. So you come at these songs from a different angle, and there are some songs that I've kind of come around a bit hearing you explain what you like or dislike about them. And that's kind of wonderful. And I think those are conversations the internet has trouble having sometimes. It's good to remind ourselves that we can talk like that, and it's okay to have your mind changed about something you feel very passionately about.
Or at least if you still don't agree with the person on the other side, at least you can sort of identify the sort of nugget of truth or experience that they're coming from there.
Yeah, to appreciate their passion.
So that's part of the genesis of this series, in case you were wondering. But anyway, going on to movie 19, Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel, aka Magearna. So let's see, on the Japanese side, we have an artist called Yuki, who performs Mailing Out My Voice. And then on the English side, we have Danny Marcus performing Soul Heart. So we're going to do what we usually do here. We're going to sort of talk about what we know about the production details and the artists, and we're going to sort of talk about the songs musically, and we're going to try to come to some sort of conclusion, and then we usually wrap up with some discussion about some of the other music associated with the movie. So we usually start each section on the Japanese side, so Anne, what can you tell me about Mailing Out My Voice and its performer Yuki?
Okay, yeah, so Yuki Kuramochi, she was the lead singer for a group called Judy and Mary, which anime fans, you probably know this band. They did a song for Rurouni Kenshin, and Judy and Mary is kind of one of the big groups to have come out of Japan. Like, they are very, very influential in the 90s and got a lot of traction in America as well. And, you know, people still talk about them and their influence on, like, new wave and punk and pop music as well. And Yuki, somewhere around, like, 2001, 2002, Judy Mary disbanded, and Yuki and I think the guitarist Takia both went off to solo careers. So Yuki, she goes by just her first name, all caps, and she's kind of a singer-songwriter. So she and her producer, Kenji Tamai, were likely commissioned to write a song for the movie 19th ending or to provide a song. I would guess that they didn't write it like specifically with this movie in mind, but rather just kind of that general, it needs to fit into Pokemon sense that's kind of been happening throughout a lot of the more recent movies.
You had mentioned a moment ago that they had influence or had been some crossover in the U.S. Can you sort of give an example?
Let's see. Judy and Mary have such an interesting sound that was unlike what was going on in America at the 90s. So it really appealed to a lot of fellow musicians, which got them a lot of traction in the US. And then again, they're releasing Sobakasu for, the anime Rurouni Kenshin got them a lot of traction with like anime fans and the convention circuit. So they just got a lot of opportunities to be invited to music festivals and, have their song on record stores and in iTunes and all those fun things as time went on. And in Japan, like, they just have a very unique sound of sort of that punk rock, but they've also got those really like high-pitched nasal vocals that you kind of associate with a lot of anime themes. Like that was kind of a movement in Japan that they were at the forefront of, to, have that dempa, almost off-key sound, but also really iconic melodies. And yeah, it was just such a unique sound and hit at a perfect time in music where a lot of artists in America were looking overseas to what was happening in other countries, that they really just got to capitalize on a lot of opportunities to go outside of their expected sphere.
Always neat when the artists have a little more of a background, which, with a new movie, you're not always sure if you're gonna get that. All right, well, if we head back over to the English side, as I mentioned, this is Soul Heart, and it is performed by Dani Marcus. So she also did the ending themes for the Diancie and Hoopa movies from the XY generation. Not sure if she'll be doing anything in the upcoming Sun and Moon generation as of yet. The music and lyrics are by Ed Goldfarb. A lot of you will remember that starting in X and Y, they sort of brought in this new guy called Ed Goldfarb to do the scoring and rearrangement and opening themes for the anime over that generation. If you'd like to know more about him, I was able to do a written interview a couple years ago. It's on the pokepress blog. If you dig through to, I think about 2014 would be about the time, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It was not long after the anime started doing its regular airing on television. So he's very much been involved the last couple years since he took over there. Dani, aside from doing these themes, she's had a little bit of involvement with the Pokemon anime. She's done a few small-ish roles. One of the ones you remember is Marley, who, if memory serves me, is one of the 2-on-2 companions in the Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum games. She's done a few other characters of the day, so this musical stuff isn't her only thing with Pokemon, but it might as well be the biggest thing she's done there. So, unfortunately, that's about all I can give you on the English side. Don't know a lot about the production, especially as it gets this deep into the series, unfortunately. I haven't had a chance to interview Dani. I'd love to do that someday. But let's move on to our second part where we talk about the musical styling of each. Going back to the Japanese side, Mailing Out My Voice has kind of a retro sound. Do you want to sort of describe it, Anne?
Oh, how can you describe what goes on? Well, with Yuki as the singer, it's definitely got like that same vocal quality and lyrical sensibility that she's had throughout her entire career of like interesting melodies and like easy to pick out melodic patterns, but you got like a very nasal sound and, almost a little bit scattered or off key, like kind of a chaotic, unpolished sound, which is like, I don't know how to find words to describe that type of vocal quality because she's a very accomplished singer, but at the same time, to our Western sensibilities, it does not sound that way. But she has that very anime sound to her voice that we kind of stereotypically associate with anime and Akihabara type music. But at the same time, she's got like a very Keiji Tamai has this beautiful underscoring that kind of balances it out and makes for an interesting blend of sounds, and then some really complicated lyrics on top of that. And I think that's kind of the feel you got from a lot of Judy and Mary stuff in the day. That's how Yuki likes to write lyrics, is she's got this childish voice singing about some very deep and complex things and a lot of really specific imagery. And then depending on who's working with her musically at the time, the accompaniment and the arrangement can take on a lot of different and diverse directions.
You mentioned the lyrics. I did browse through an English translation of them. You could apply it to the movie in maybe a couple different ways. The most direct one, I think, would be sort of comparing to the relationship between Vulcanian and Magearna. Does that sound about right to you?
I think you could, because, yeah, they spent a lot of time kind of apart but being connected through different ways. I wonder if you could almost make this an ending theme for a different movie, because I was getting a lot of vibes of like Ash and his mom and Ash and Brock and Misty and, you know, that traveling faraway places but still connected sort of thing and sending letters back home. Maybe movie 2 or 3 where like mom actually showed up and we talked about those themes of like being away from home. Like, I don't know, it just felt like this almost would work better for some other movie. Did you get that kind of a vibe at all, or?
Well, certainly the reference to mailing certainly suggests something other than sort of the, you know, the Magearna-Vulcanian relationship, because, yeah, it certainly implies some sort of long-range physical communication. Yeah, there is, in the movie, actually, there are several different, I guess you could say, types of connections, because, of course, there's the bond between Vulcania and Magearna. There's also the almost physical link between Ash and Vulcanian during most of the movie.
Yeah, there's that.
Where they have that weird thing where if they get too far apart, they get pulled back together. That's an interesting idea. I'm not sure if it's used super well there, but I kind of like the mechanic. They've done similar things in episodes before, but anyway. And you sort of have, you know, you have the prince and the princess from the kingdom. So they're kind of connected in a way. So I guess this is kind of a movie about connections of a sort.
Yeah, and there's the connection from like history to the present that had the potential, at least, to be really poetic and powerful that you could apply to this song. But like the movie itself, there's so many very interesting things that don't coalesce as a whole. Like the song by itself is really complex and beautiful, and the music video is super interesting, but it doesn't connect to the movie. And the movie has so many interesting things and ideas and moments, like the mechanical thing that keeps Ash and Vulcanian together, and again the history connection and passage of time, but it doesn't come together to mean something as a whole in the way that a lot of other movies have done better.
Yeah, that's sort of spoil my opinion on the movie itself.
Sorry, we maybe could have jumped to that later, but
but this is not definitely not near the top of the list of Pokemon movies for me, probably actually towards the bottom, to be honest. I watched this for the first time a week or two ago in Australia with Devin, Maryland, and I watched it again today just to sort of refresh on it. But in any case, there's definitely some connection mechanics in the movie, so I guess maybe that sort of fits in there.
Yeah, maybe that's why I liked it so much, just like all the little things, and maybe as I'm slowly starting to realize that it doesn't all fit together, maybe it's going to start dropping down the rankings for me. But
as far as the music of there, at the beginning and end of the song, I have trouble. It's kind of a clicking type noise. I have trouble describing it. It's sort of this, I suppose it's supposed to sound kind of like a small gear or something like that, because of course we have Magearna, I guess, is the mechanic there they wanted to throw in. Does that sound about right to you?
It does, and there's it may also be a bit of a connection to the PV, the music video, because she does a lot of interesting things with puppetry. I mean, I would guess if they were told some things about the movie before they started work on this song, it's probably more of a callback to Magearna, but it kind of, that clicking sound kind of gives you the feel of an old-timey movie and like the moving of the puppet and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even if you can get to that song, I'm guessing that video is pretty hard to come by in the US, so yeah, I'm not sure, because a lot of that, like, the song itself is blocked. Sometimes the video is, too, outside of Japan, especially if it, like, has scenes in the movie or anything like that.
Maybe. But I'm pretty sure, like, you might not find it on YouTube, but I think if you Google Yuki and the title name in Japanese, you'll find the official Japanese sites and like her website and things will come up.
Okay.
And you should be able to find it without too much trouble there. Like, I think it's been released officially through some internet channels and available to play in other countries.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it is a little bit more difficult, I think, probably.
Beyond that, any other comments on either the style or the lyrics of the song there?
You know, I'm not really a huge fan of her voice especially, but there's something very charming and old-fashioned about the sound and the song as a whole that I really appreciate. And for a song specifically about Pokemon and Ash and Pikachu and that sort of feel of his journey traveling and his connections to other people, I really like it. There's even like a line about like a 7-colored rainbow arch, which like ties back to Best Wishes. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon in this song, but I don't see it for the movie. And that is always my thing on this, in this series. So
that may be one advantage, not that it always gets used there, but that the dub does have, because they know the basic plot line, and they have a few extra months. It used to be, of course, like a full year and a half between when they were released in Japan and when it would come out in America. Now it's still a few months. That may give them a little extra wiggle room to work on something there.
Keep listening for more from this interview.